Have you ever given to someone and thought, oh, they haven't even said thank you, and you want to just call them all these names, right? Well, there is a way that we can give without expecting to receive. And I want to address the spirit of generosity and explore a little bit with you about not only when we give, what is it that we actually are getting from giving? And also, how do we observe other people's responses when we give them something? Do they say thank you? How do you feel about that? Catch up on the other side of the true spirit of generosity and what I think that actually means and how we can use that in our lives. Hi guys, Calvin again. So we were talking about giving and the true spirit of generosity, right? And, when we give, why do we give? And of course, giving is a wonderful, wonderful thing. We know this. But I want to get into the weeds a little bit about why do we expect people to say thank you? Why do we expect that payoff? Can we give without expectation truly? So I was actually on my way to the station one day, the train station. And, in the UK we have fairly polite. I know all the big cities have road rage. All the global cities in the world have road rage, okay? That goes without saying. London is no exception. But generally speaking, in the UK, people are quite courteous. And if you stop at a crossing to let someone cross, they will wave and they will say thank you, even though you have to give them a right of way. If you let someone out, they'll flash the lights. It's a courteous culture, right? That's the point. So I was on my way to the station. And I get there, and just ahead of me, someone was crossing at the zebra crossing, right? So I see them going over, and this guy stops, lets them cross. They cross, they've got their headphones in, having a great morning, everything's fine. Off that person goes. And the guy in the van who stopped was angry. He just looked at that person with absolute rage, right? Seriously angry. And he shook his head, and he went, You never say thank you! He wound his window down to shout at this person for not saying thank you. And then he drove off. Unbelievable! Unbelievable! And he looked at me as if I was to agree with him and nod my head as well to say, yeah, that person's so out of order, right? So what's actually going on there? This guy has an expectation that the person should say thank you. There's nothing wrong with saying thank you, of course. If you're grateful, you express your gratitude. That's fine. But we're not talking about the gratitude. We're talking about the expectation of gratitude, which is a separate thing altogether. So in the spirit of generosity, we know it's one of the kindest things we can do as a human being. We've seen acts of generosity, random acts of kindness. We've seen some beautiful elements of giving and generosity from people in the world all over history. And we do it in ourselves in the smallest ways a lot of times. But do we have an expectation that that person should say thank you? That that person should say, you're so amazing? Do we expect that someone should have witnessed us doing this amazing act of generosity so that we feel better about ourselves? Do we hope to be able to brag about a particular act of generosity that we had done on our social media channels or what have you? Go home and talk about it on the stage at work? Or the point here is that there is always a payoff somewhere along the line. Or at least there is commonly a payoff somewhere along the line when we are being generous, when we are giving, when we are sharing. So ask yourself just now, is that true for you? Do you know anybody who it is true for? And let's explore this idea of giving without expecting. Now, first and foremost, I always talk about mindful attitudes. So when I first realized in myself that when I was giving, I was actually expecting something back, whether that was a gratitude from the person, from an explicit thank you, or whether that was some kind of quiet payoff even inside that I'm getting, that I can go away and think, oh, look how amazing I am. What an amazing thing I've done today. Whatever that is, just notice it. Now, this is where the non-judgment attitude is very helpful. Because for me, when I started to notice these things, I had a tendency to want to kick myself. Oh man, I'm not a good person at all. I was giving and then I was expecting terrible. No, that's not what this is about, right? We bring an attitude of non-judgment to these realizations, but it is about the realization itself. And this is the point. So when we are giving, let's see if we can give in a truly generous spirit. The true spirit of generosity is one that gives without expectation of receiving a payoff at all. If we give something to a person and they don't even look at us, but we give it to them out of the generosity and kindness of our heart, if we give it with the intention of sharing the true spirit of generosity, then it doesn't really matter what that person does in receipt. It doesn't really matter whether they give you the eye contact. It doesn't matter whether they say thank you. It doesn't matter whether you feel great about it or not feel great about it, because actually in the true spirit of generosity, we are giving selflessly. There is no self to be ameliorated, to be bigged up, to be patted on the back. There is just the spirit of sharing. I once heard someone say it is just the universe rearranging itself. I think it was John Kabat-Zinn actually, in one of his books. So explore this in your next, I don't know, when you're next out, when you next give, when you next do something for anybody, when you next make that cup of tea for your relative, when you cook dinner for your children, when you give something to the homeless person on the street, when your colleague asks you for a favor and you do it, whatever that is, just observe, are we really giving selflessly? And if we're not, in a non-judgmental way, we have a new opportunity of development, that we open out into a space of selfless giving each time we develop our awareness of these things.